Hello. Thank you for making the choice to join us here at the Greenbrier Church Online. I need to start today by making a confession. I've told you before that it was never my plans to work as a preaching minister. I never took a class on preaching. I never learned how to write a proper sermon. But over the last 20 years, I've found a formula that kind of works for me. I read the text if I'm preaching through a book of the Bible, or I read all of the text that I can find if I'm preaching on a topic. And after I have spent some time with the text, then I begin to read as much as I can from other people, commentaries, books, articles, sermons, devotional thoughts. And then after I've read all of that, I begin to put down my own thoughts and start to shape what I believe that I need to say. One of the last things that I do is I try to find a story or some way to grab your attention, because we live in this world that's shaped by 30-second social media clips. And I know that if I don't grab your attention pretty quickly, you just turn me off or zone out. So this week I'm working through my process, but I can't find a story. I read through some illustration books, I search the web, I even wrote a few personal stories and memories that I had, but nothing seemed right. And to be honest, I was getting kind of frustrated. So I do what you do. I turned everything off. I tried to give myself some space, thinking that if I could create some space, I'd figure it out. But my frustration continued to grow. My mind wouldn't stop coming up with these stories, crafting these stories. And then the other night, as I'm standing in the kitchen cooking dinner, I figured out what my problem was. Last week, we began a series on the 7 deadly sins, and this week we're starting with the first one, the cornerstone sin, pride. And as I'm standing in my kitchen, it struck me that it's my own struggle with pride that made every illustration, every story that I was writing, written in a way that made me look like the good guy. I wrote a story about a conversation that I had with a friend at a conference. I wrote a story about a time that I was at a soccer game with my boys, and in every single story, I had to look good. You see, my confession to you today is that my own sin of pride made it difficult to write a sermon about pride. Because in this sermon, I feel the need to be the hero of the story. And I'm not. In the book Mere Christianity, C.S. Lewis wrote, "Pride leads to every other vice. It's the complete anti-God state of mind." Pride has been a part of every sin ever since the Garden of Eden. I mean, when Satan tempts Adam and Eve in the garden, his first appeal was to their pride. The serpent told them, "You will be like God." So it shouldn't surprise us that when we look at the other 6 sins in this list, pride is a key component to each of them. I mean, pride is found in our envy. My pride convinces me that I deserve better. Pride is found in my anger, because my pride makes me believe that I'm the one that needs to be catered to. And if something or someone doesn't cater to my whim, doesn't give me what I feel like I deserve, I feel wounded. I lash out. Pride is found in greed, because my pride leads me to believe that I deserve everything my eyes see. I falsely believe that everything out there is going to make me happy, if it's even for a fleeting moment. Pride is found in gluttony. My pride says that there's never enough. I always need more. I deserve numerous choices. I deserve to have more. Pride is found in sloth, because my pride has me convinced that, I can get by or even do better than you. Just give minimal effort. And pride is found in lust. It's my pride that allows me to reduce people to a collection of favored body parts. Pride says that I can gawk at someone created in the image of God, regardless of the way they feel about it, that I can treat them less than human and treat them as something for my entertainment, my joy, and still call myself humane. When we talk about pride, we got to understand there is a difference between having pride and being prideful. I think it's okay to have pride in something that you worked on and accomplished. But this need, this desire to have people pat you on the back and tell you how great you are and realize how wonderful you are, well, that's prideful. This need for other people to give us their approval allows us to get over-focused on our reputation and what other people think about us instead of who we truly are. I mean, after all, image is everything, right? Think about it this way. If you study real hard for a test and you make an A, you can be proud of that. But it's prideful if you want that grade posted so that everybody will know that you made an A. Pride wants everyone to recognize how successful, powerful, rich, or put together you are. And pride is a strong temptation for us because all of us, regardless of how much you protest, all of us want to be recognized. I mean, if we do a good job, we want our boss to recognize the hard work that we do. We want to get an award for community service. We want to post a picture or a video on social media of us giving a check to a worthy cause. We all have this inner desire for a little public acknowledgement and approval. And our struggle with pride often shows up in 100 different ways. There are times that our pride causes us to exaggerate or to boast about our accomplishments. I mean, all of us have exaggerated something in an effort to impress those that are listening. It can often be seen in the stories that we tell. That's why that fish you caught last summer gets bigger every time you tell the story. We exaggerate because we falsely believe that in doing so, we're going to make other people think more highly of us. It makes sense that our pride would cause us to boast because the only way that you can be impressed about what I've done is if you know about what I've done, and if nobody else is going to tell you what I've done, then I'll tell you. Our pride is seen in the fact that we gossip, even though we know that we shouldn't talk about people behind their backs, but sometimes we just can't seem to help ourselves. Whether we're among family or at work or with friends, just a few pointed words shared in confidence gives us an ego boost. Can we just be honest and admit that there are times when saying bad things about other people makes us feel good? We often find ourselves making decisions because of our pride, and this is not based on how our decisions will glorify God, but rather, what are people going to think about me if I do it? It's ironic that the art of impressing others and gaining their applause oftentimes involves carefully hiding myself, just as much as it involves showing myself off. I mean, if I'm going to get the praise that I crave from others, there are some things I'm never going to let you see. Winning your approval and your praise requires not only that I put a false self forward, but I've also got to make sure that I hide certain things about me. We desperately want to make sure that everybody only sees the good that we accomplish. I mean, after all, what good is it to do good when nobody sees the good that you do? The truth is, when you get right down to it, the reason that we struggle with pride is because we want people to focus on me instead of having people focus on God. But here's what I've discovered in my own life. While it might be a temptation for me to be recognized for my contributions and hard work at home or school or the athletic field or the workplace, my greatest temptation for pride is that people will acknowledge my goodness. Thomas Aquinas said that our greatest temptation for pride is found in the midst of our virtue and good character because it seems to bother us the most when our virtue goes unnoticed. He wrote, "While other vices find their home in the servants of the devil, pride finds its place in the servants of Christ." In Matthew 6, we read, "Be careful not to do your acts of righteousness before men to be seen by them. If you do, you'll have no reward from your Father in heaven. So when you give to the needy, do not announce it with trumpets as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and on the streets to be honored by men. I tell you the truth, they've received their reward in full. And when you pray, do not be like the hypocrites, for they love to pray standing in the synagogues and on the street corners to be seen by men. I tell you the truth, they have received their reward in full." Did you notice that Jesus doesn't say you need to do acts of righteousness? It's like he just assumes if you're in the kingdom, you're going to do righteous things. But what he does say is be careful when you're doing righteous things, when you're being good, when you're holding on to your virtue, that you're living for the Lord and not to be seen or noticed by other people. Our pride is what causes this desire for other people to acknowledge our goodness. And if you're doing what you do so that other people will talk about how wonderful you are, Jesus says, then that's exactly what you're going to get. You're going to get a life spent craving human glory and praise, full of empty-hearted acts, all for the sake of appearances that will only bring the fleeting applause the world can give you. Some of Jesus' harshest words were for the Pharisees because they were more concerned about the appearance, the outward observances of religion than they were for actually cultivating a heart dedicated to worshiping God. The 23rd chapter of Matthew is rough and has a lot of pretty pointed and direct words for the Pharisees. Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You clean the outside of the cup and dish, but inside they are full of greed and self-indulgence. Blind Pharisee, first clean the inside of the cup and dish, and then the outside will also be clean. Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You're like whitewashed tombs, which look beautiful on the outside, but on the inside are full of dead men's bones and everything unclean. In the same way, on the outside, you appear to people as righteous, but on the inside, you're full of hypocrisy and wickedness. Last Wednesday was Valentine's Day, a day centered around love and cheap chocolate and Hallmark cards. For a moment, I want you to imagine that you were able to get a reservation at the nicest restaurant in town. Now, this is going to be a pretty expensive outing, but it's okay. You've been saving up and planning for this night for quite some time. You pull into a parking lot that is surrounded by a beautifully manicured lawn. A young man in a pressed uniform opens your door and they give you a ticket. They valet your car out to the parking lot. As you walk into the restaurant, you notice all of the beautiful flowers that accent the decor. It all looks perfect. As you walk in, you're met by the maitre d' who walks you to your table. And as you're walking to your table, you notice the atmosphere. There's a fireplace in the room. There's a piano in the corner playing soft, romantic music. You walk past all these tables that are covered with fine linen tablecloths and beautiful porcelain dishes and candlelight. When you make it to your table, you look down and you notice that your linen tablecloth has a couple small stains on it. You have a glass that's already filled with water, but when you pick the glass up, you see something floating just under the ice. And your fork looks like it still has some food on it that didn't come clean in the dishwasher. When you pick up your napkin, you notice that it also has stains. And when the waiter approaches the table, you notice that they've got black gunk under their fingernails. And when he smiles, they've got lettuce in their teeth. You haven't even ordered yet. But what thoughts are going through your mind? Sure, at first glance, everything looked beautiful. It seemed perfect, but the longer you sit in that restaurant, the more you begin to notice how dirty and unkempt everything is. You begin to get this urge to just excuse yourself and make your way back out to the car, because it doesn't matter how nice everything was on the outside. It was the inside that ruined your experience. You make the choice to leave because cleanliness on the inside is much more important than cleanliness on the outside. That's how Jesus described what the scribes and the Pharisees had done. They went through all the right motions of religion. They gave the appearance of pious devotion to God because that's the part that everybody could see. Everybody could see that they went to church every week. They could see that they fasted and prayed. People saw that they gave lots of money when the collection plate came around. People were amazed at how righteous they were. But on the inside, On the inside, their hearts were absolutely corrupt. They had the appearance of being righteous. They were recognized by everyone around them for their righteousness, but it was just a show. Now, before we come down too hard on the Pharisees, I want to try to get a little closer to home because we're talking about our sins in this series and not the sins of the people out in the world. So there's a question that I have to ask you. It's one that I've asked several times over the last few months, but I need to ask you again. How much time did you spend preparing for worship today? For a moment, go through your routine this morning. Think about all the things that you did. Did you brush your teeth, take a shower, comb your hair, shave, put on makeup? Did you iron your clothes, make a cup of coffee before you headed out the door? How much time did it take you to get ready this morning? Got a rough estimate? Okay. Now, how much time did you spend preparing your heart for worship? How much time did you spend praying to God, asking Him to make you receptive to His Word? How much time did you spend confessing your sins and asking God to remove anything in your mind or your heart that would prevent you from being able to worship Him fully? How much time did you spend getting your heart and your mind ready for worship today? I've discovered that my pride makes it really, really easy to criticize the Pharisees. Actually, it feels kind of good to criticize them. But the truth is that I'm more like them than I'm comfortable admitting. I spend an awful lot of time getting my outside ready, making sure the outside of this cup or this tomb looks presentable, only to neglect what's going on in the inside. It's because the outside that everybody sees. I want to make sure that I give a good impression to everybody around me. I want to make sure that I look good on the outside while I don't pay a lot of attention to the corruptness on the inside. One of the primary reasons that Jesus constantly battled with the Pharisees was that their religion was merely an external religion. Outwardly, they show respect, they show dedication to the law, but they did it out of pride. They did it because they wanted everybody to recognize what great men they were, while on the inside, their hearts were far from the Spirit of God. The Pharisees were also obsessed with their image. They wanted to be looked up to. They wanted to be respected. They loved the praise of men. They loved the status that it brought. But their motivation was their pride. So as we get ready to make our way to the tables today, I want us to take a moment to figure out, how do we deal with this deadly sin in our lives? And it's difficult because it's hard to even imagine living a life in where we care only about what God thinks about us and not what other people think. And I could talk to you about it from a counselor's perspective. We could talk about not comparing yourself to others and learning how to embrace our failures, but today, I think there's a better way to combat our pride, a way that leads us to the table. When we gather at the tables, we gather as an acknowledgement that we can't save ourselves. The salvation that we have is a gift we received from God because of His amazing grace and His amazing love. And if we were to actually acknowledge the magnitude of that gift, we would have no other option but to humble ourselves before Him. In James 4, we read, God oppresses the proud, but He pours out grace on the humble. So submit yourselves to the one true God and fight against the devil and his schemes. If you do, he will run away in failure. Come close to the one true God, and He will draw close to you. Wash your hands. You've dirtied them in sin. Cleanse your heart, because your mind is split down the middle. Your love for God on one side and selfish pursuits on the other. Now is the time to lament, to grieve, and to cry. Dissolve your laughter into sobbing and exchange your joy for depression. Lay yourself bare, face down to the ground in humility before the Lord, and He will lift your head so you can stand tall. The way to battle pride is to humble yourself before God. Arrogance and pride says, my desires come first. But the cure to pride is to submit to God and to resist the devil. We humble ourselves when we acknowledge that God is greater than we are and that we're the ones in desperate need of Him. It's an understanding that this is His world. But if we're honest, too often we think the world is about me. I mean, my entire life has been a movie where I'm the star because I'm in every scene and the rest of you are just supporting actors. But living a life of humility knows that all of life is about God. There is a movie going on, but God is the star of the movie. I'm just a supporting character in that movie. It's always been about Him. I mean, the very first words of the Bible are, in the beginning, God. It's all about God. Life is about God. This is His story and His invitation for us to be in a relationship with Him. Humbling yourself before God means that you understand that true joy can only be found in a relationship with God. And that relationship can withstand any storm or struggle found in this life. Drawing near to God is only possible because God longs to establish a relationship with you, a relationship that is deeper, stronger, and more satisfying than you can even begin to imagine. And today we find God waiting for us, waiting at the table for us to humble ourselves and to join Him. And so this morning, as you take the bread and you take the cup, you're being given the opportunity to remember how much God loves you. Everything that God did to offer you this relationship and offer you this opportunity to acknowledge Him as God. God made the first move. And at the table, we're given the opportunity to take the second move, to acknowledge His goodness, His holiness, His love, and His place of position and authority in our lives. At the table, we're being called to humble ourselves and allow Him to lift us up. I hope you have a wonderful time and a great conversation around the table this morning. I hope you're in a place that you can be honest about your struggle with pride, about how the fact you need to be the hero of your story instead of allowing God to be the hero. This morning, I hope and I pray that as you take the emblems, you are reminded of how much our awesome, wonderful, and loving God cares for you and how He invites you to take a part of His story. I hope you have a wonderful week. Please go in peace, and I look forward to seeing you very soon.